Well, it was a crazy weekend in Australia for F2 and F3. Welcome to episode 8 of Formula Talk, where we're here to discuss the F2 and F3 Australian Grand Prix review. My name is Sophia, and joining me, we got some new faces this time. We have Mathew from Grip Strip Podcast. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm great. Glad to be on the new show here. We're going and staying busy with the whole Grid Talk family here this afternoon. So it's great to be here with you, Sophia, and looking forward to talking about all the different races that we're going to be talking about here today.
Yeah, I absolutely can't wait. And joining me as well is Jawad. Hi, from Hit the
Hello.
Apex.
Hey, how are we?
Yeah. Oh, as an Aussie who's been to this race, how excited are you to talk about this weekend, this roundup?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. And yeah, it is exciting to be able to, use my little fact-finding mission about the junior series, which I don't really watch on this side of the world a whole lot. So it was just great exposure and, trying to learn all the drivers and all the different bit of racecraft that you see. I can see why everyone enjoys it because it is quite chaotic.
Oh, definitely. We'll definitely go into it in this episode because there's been absolutely so many crashes, so many flags, so many yellow cards, even a disqualification of an entire team, which we'll get into that in a moment. But before we get into the episode, we must thank our sponsor, BetOnline. BetOnline remains your number one source for all your college basketball betting this season. Get analysis of every play, prop, and point on BetOnline. You'll find the latest odds, bracket contests, team matchups, and game trends at BetOnline. Updated odds from everything like live games, conference championships, right through the Final Four and championship game. BetOnline is your college basketball headquarters this season. Head to our website today or use your mobile device to sign up and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Be sure to use our promo code BELIEVE, that is BLEAV, to receive your bonus. BetOnline.ag, where the game starts. So let's get into it. Formula 2. It was just a crazy weekend with the weather. I'll just start off. The weather was the biggest factor that entire weekend. We had free practice that actually was cut short. We had qualifying cut short, not just for F2, but F3. This is a track that no driver has really ever been on. So how much of an effect? That was wow. Can't even speak right now. It was an amazing effect to how these drivers performed because they had to show their skill and their development. Philip, what do you think? How is it for you?
I mean, having to go to a brand new circuit for the first time and not having a lot of time at all, both in practice and qualifying, and then basically having to set out for two races is definitely not ideal. And also considering how close the battles are in these two series, that kind of makes it kind of an interesting recipe. Certain drivers, of course, did step up, and it proves once again, I guess, for what we're looking at early in the season on who we might be seeing as the champion. But you just have to go out there and figure it out as quick as possible and do the best you can. Really, that's all you can do. And some of the more veteran drivers in this series did that, and that's what it's all about. And I mean, the weekend itself, I mean, Jawad can talk about it. You got F2, F3, the supercars, and Formula One, and trying to run 4 supercars races, run 2 races for the F2 and F3, and then you need to get practice sessions, qualifying, and the Australian Grand Prix in there too. The logistics in that is pretty crazy. So credit to the people who run the Grand Prix to get all that stuff in.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Jared, how soaking wet were you? Were you actually on the circuit? Were you able to find kind of shelter throughout this entire weekend? Because the downpour, it was 2:00 in the morning my time. Props to y'all for used to getting up at this time. I could not. And the rain, the amount of coffee, I was feeling 3 coffees that entire day, each day. But how was it for you seeing everything live? And whereabouts were you watching it from?
Yeah, so for the qualifying session on Friday, I was in the media center at the time because it was just after FP2 had finished for F1. So it was like, okay, let's stick around and see how qualifying goes. And then because the rain had started, I didn't realize it was going to intensify as much as it did. I had my little radar app going and I'm like, oh, it doesn't look too bad. And, I was also trying to plan my getaway from the circuit as well, because 130 odd thousand people there almost every day. You have to try and plan what time you're going to leave so you don't get the crowds. But yeah, like what a session it was. There was cars going off everywhere. There was excitement because in practice we saw Jack Doohan go fastest. So the local lad, of course, and seeing his dad there as well, the legendary Mick Doohan from motorcycle racing. So, and it didn't end up being such a great weekend for him in the races, but yeah, like what a session seeing Iwasa and Pusher go to the front and everything. So it really tested them. And like Phil said too, it's a circuit that none of them are going to they're not going to be familiar with unless they've played it on the F1 games. It's probably the only thing in the world you could play Albert Park on. So yeah, it was just one big learning exercise. And, the maturity of the ones who come forward, that's who you see as being contenders ultimately.
Yeah, definitely. So as you mentioned, Iwasa was able to take pole position for qualifying in F2 with Teo Pocher, who I've said on multiple podcasts, but George and Tom as well. That's kind of one of our drivers to look out for this entire season so far. Had a bit of an issue previous in Jeddah, but obviously kind of have jumped back to it. So with the reverse grid, because again, sprint race is the top 10 in Formula 2 will be reversed. We had Dennis Hauger take pole. However, he stayed on pole. Like, from lights to flag, obviously there was a few safety cars. And again, weather was a big issue on the Saturday. Well, Saturday, yeah, technically it was like close to Friday night my time because of the time difference and everything. But Saturday for most of the people watching, he had a good race. He was battling with Jack Crawford a few times, his Red Bull junior counterpart, but it was just a masterclass on Dennis because he was able just to keep his nerve down, keep out of any issues, and just drive consistently, even with the ever-changing weather, with all the different safety cars. And tire strategies were a big key part of that as well, switching to when to go the wets and when to drop off from the wets. Back to Phil. How was your take about the sprint race for F2?
Yeah, I mean, you think about the sprint and Hauger going and coming through with the victory. I mean, he's driving for MP. They're the defending constructors champions or teams champions in the series, and to go and beat a fellow Red Bull driver, development driver, is a good thing for him. Jack Crawford, of course, is well regarded within the Red Bull junior team, which is expansive. It seems like hundreds of people are on it. So the fact that Jack Crawford hasn't been screwed over by Marco and them is a credit to him. I guess he says and does the right things, and he has proven that he has pace. And what is it, his third race in F2, and he gets a second place finish in a sprint. I also credit to Kushmaini, one of the two Indian drivers on the grid as well, to get a podium finish. He had good pace in F3 at times. Now he's getting into F2. Usually I'm always looking for the Americans and the Indian drivers, just my personal, because of my upbringing where I come from. So I was happy. I kind of was more happy about who finished second and third. But you got the diversity of how all the different teams, the competitiveness there is in this category. Hauger only winning by 1.1 seconds shows that you have great competition. And I mean, in terms of the likes of Teo Pocher, who's likely one of the next people who will be on the Formula One grid, an unfortunate DNF for him, losing some ground in the points. But I think as the season goes on, we're going to see more of Teo Pocher put himself out there and really take a hold of the championship. The likes of the guy we're going to talk about here shortly doesn't go and run away with it.
Definitely. I mean, with Teo Pocher as well, he has Victor Martins, who's proven himself already that he is a good contender, having taken pole and having taken some wins and podiums in these last couple of rounds so far. But looking at like the podium, so Dennis Harger was able to take podium, followed by Jack Crawford and Chris Manny, as all mentioned by Phil, and then Arthur Leclerc finishing P4. He has not had the best season so far with moving over to Dams, moving into Formula 2, I should say, as well, given that he was with Formula 3 with Prema these last couple of years. Quite a great result for him as well. And I've said this on all my episodes when I do my predictions. Zane Maloney, the boy from Barbados, got to rep the islands. I'm so happy he's kind of finishing top 5. Obviously, I would love for him to finish the podium, given that that was my predictions when I was talking to George in our previous episode, which you can listen back when you search F1 Chronicle on Spotify and YouTube and Apple Podcasts as well. But it's been quite an interesting one. But looking into the following day in the feature race, now, again, safety cars. We had 2 safety cars, a red flag, some great overtaking as well throughout the race. And it was Iwasa who, again, similar to Dennis Hauger, who started on pole and finished on the top place. Gerald, how was it? What was your take on the entire race?
Well, sorry, the way Iwasa got away, he kind of just walked to the win. And, if you just look at the results on paper, you wouldn't see what unfolded, or you wouldn't understand what unfolded behind him. It was a good race for him, but yeah, behind the weather's probably been the best it had been all weekend for the F2 drivers to run. But yeah, there was just so much going on. Paul Crawford ended up in the barriers and whatnot. Jack Doohan, I think, got spun by Juan Manuel Correa as well. I heard Hadia on the radio screaming about there was a pit stop bungle with Oliver Bierman as well. So there was just a lot going on in that race. And then ultimately, the way it concluded as well under safety car, given the day before we had the 2-lap restart, and I wanted to say how that's how a safety car restart should be done, with the way that driver's able to actually get to the checkered flag without creating more chaos. So yeah, just unpacking it all was like, whoa, this is because F2 and F3 on the Sunday, the feature races were run. So F2 was like at 10 to 9 in the morning, and F2 I think was like 10:30 or closer to 11. So perfect way to start your Sunday morning is to listen to the rocket ships that these cars are. And I got to say, I've only ever heard F2 and F3 once before, and that was in Abu Dhabi 2014. So to see where they are now with the sound and everything, especially the backfire, oh goodness, it sounds glorious. So anyway, just waking up and everything, and then watching this sort of race unfold, it was really exciting.
Definitely. I've seen clips of like on TikTok, because I love following TikTok, and F1 is quite all over my For You page. And it's been interesting, some of the clips that I can see, and it's like it's showing the same corner, like the F3 cars, the F2 cars, and the F1s. And the difference, F2 and F1 sound quite similar, but F3 is in a league of its own. And then it's just F2's backfire sounds, it's a weird kind of blend to it, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, I mean, there's so much that we can unpack about this weekend, and we don't have as much time as I would love to. I would love to spend hours talking about this, but trying to keep it under 45 minutes for sure per episode. But overall, I mean, yeah, pit strategies were quite a big thing. The fact that obviously going back to even the sprint race as well, doing the 2-lap compared to how it was in Formula 1, and the issues with how do we finish the race and all that, it was quite a difference on how the FIA took it compared to, because obviously FIA manages F1, F2, and F3. So like even the difference of choices made under the safety cars and the flags was quite an interesting take on it, which I don't think a lot of people have actually discussed, that it's the same situation, yet two different outcomes on how the race was ending, which is confusing to say the least, 100%. But yeah, so the podium for the F2 feature race was Iwasa, obviously, Teo Pourchaire taking second, and then Arthur Leclerc, his first F2 podium as a rookie driver. And to be fair, I think George actually got his prediction almost right. He has said Teo Pourchaire and Arthur Leclerc was potentially going to get on podium with maybe Jack Doohan. So fair to him. My predictions have been absolutely off the mark every single episode. I think it's going to be a running joke how bad my predictions will be. I'm getting my top 5 all right, I think. Zay Maloney finishing in top 5 again. But looking at the standings because of that, Iwasa's been able to take the lead over Ralph Walshaw, given that Ralph had no points for the last 2 weekends. Not last 2 weekends, last 2 races, sorry, in the sprint and the feature. And we'll see how it goes. I mean, yeah, Teo Pourchaire again, we'll just keep on going for it. Frederick Bessie, who won obviously in Jeddah, did quite well. And then a few other people. Jack Doohan, hometown hero, was able to finish 8th in the feature, which was his higher finish compared to the sprint race. Now, F3. Very similar case in qualifying and in free practice, sessions ending earlier than was expected. Lots of damages, lots of crashes. We saw Tommy Smith, for example, another hometown hero, an Aussie driver who was kind of posed maybe to be a favorite, even though they've only raced once this season so far. Lots of crashes, and this is the second round out of 7 for Formula 3. So they've had a break for about 2 to 3 weeks, which is probably a lot of people will be in the sims testing. Those who are reserve drivers, or junior drivers for other teams probably might work with them. But to go from a secure track to an absolute no understanding track is quite a big jump. Jared, what was your take on it? Like, how much of a difference was F2 to F3 for you watching it?
Quite a significant difference, and you can see that with driving standards and even just the way that they you can hear them on the team radio as well. A lot of them get hot under the collar quite quickly, which doesn't get you very far when you go further up the ranks. And there's a son of a particular former ex-F1 driver who I remember got hot under the collar quite well, but and he did really well to finish on the podium as well on one of the days. So that was good to see young Sebastian Montoya and his dad Juan Pablo there as well. So again, affected by the weather as well, and it's a real test of your character as a driver, how well you can adapt to these conditions. And the track was quite slippery all weekend, with the kind of grip and different tire compounds being used across the different categories as well. So, for it to unfold as it did, I think, it was quite a success, and the category as a whole will be looking forward to it, to seeing how they go in the future when they come back here. But yeah, like big difference between F2 and F3, I think.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just there's also, I would say, majority the entire grid of F3 is rookies. Half of the grid is almost rookies. Some of them have really minimal single-seater background. We discussed it in a previous episode looking at the drivers for F2 and F3, where some races drivers have only been in single-seater for 2-3 years and they're already in Formula 3, and they didn't even race in like regionals. They've just kind of moved from karting even to single-seater. So it definitely, we've said multiple times, it's more a show of the skill and the natural ability for these drivers, because it's a whole new game. If they were to race in Jeddah, it would have been the same kind of situation as well for some of these drivers, but it's a whole new ballpark for a lot of these drivers. And so qualifying actually was the exact same 3 drivers to the round up the top 3. Well, than it was for Bahrain, which was Gabriel Bortoleto was able to take pole, given that he also was able to secure points, given that he took him pole. Joining him on the front row was Gregor Saucy. And again, that was the starting lineup for the Sunday feature race. But with the reverse, it was Sebastian Montoya. Yeah, that makes so much sense, given that we were just talking about him. Sorry, brain just absolutely scattered. So he was able to take the reverse grid pole for the sprint race as he finished 12th. Again, F3, it's top 12 will reverse compared to F2 with the reverse. But sprint race, there was a bit of an issue towards the end to see who actually won the race. Technically, it was Franco Colapinto who standed on the podium and received the trophy. However, shortly after, it was decided that he wasn't the race winner. And this was due to MP Motorsport as a whole team getting disqualified due to a technical infringement. So with Franco finishing first, Murray Boyer finished 9th and Johnny Edgar, which was 11th. So two drivers in the points being DQ'd. It meant that Zach O'Sullivan, who has been in the game for ages-ish, 2 to 3 years, in F3, was able to take his pole, take the win. Sebastian Montoya was able to get into second, and Paul Aaron was able to take his first ever podium for Prema in his rookie year. Philip, what was your take on the sprint? Because it was an interesting race, 50-50, but Franco was quite consistent. It was just that DQ just came out of the blue.
Yeah, going and having your whole entire team disqualified after the race has got to really be a brutal pill, and especially for Franco Colapinto, who has shown a lot of poise relative to some of his compatriots out there on the grid. Somebody that I would say is one of those people to look at as we go along through the season. Unfortunate to lose that win. It puts him on the back foot in terms of the points. So you go out there, you win the race, and then you end up not having anything to show for it. I mean, Colapinto now went from having 25 points or 10 points, which would have basically moved him up right into the mix, really, for basically from third on back. And he the weekend ended up just going away from him. For Zach O'Sullivan, a recovery from not having any points at Secure to go and get that win, driving for Colapinto's currently 12th. That's right. And then Zach O'Sullivan moves up with his results from the whole weekend into the top 10, driving for one of the better teams on the grid, of course, in Prema, and being a Williams junior driver. I mean, I doubt he's going to be up there anytime soon, but he is somebody they are looking at amongst their junior driver contingent. And getting that win, it's a good thing for him, good momentum. When you're in a Prema seat, you have to win. You have to be up front. That's just kind of the deal. They've been winning ever since the new formula for Formula 3 has come along. They have been essentially the best team. And so you have to be good, or else, I mean, you're probably going to be done. So good for Zach O'Sullivan there to get that victory. Sebastian Montoya getting out there and getting a second place finish. Good job by him. I mean, trying to learn on the fly, really. Last year, driving LMP2s both in the United States and in Europe with his dad, his legendary father. And now you're jumping in an F3. It's going to be a long learning curve, but he has shown over time the potential that he has. And, having to live up to be in the shadow of a father who's won in so many different types of motorsports is tough, but Sebastian's doing the best he can. So credit to him on that. And then, for Aaron, it's the same deal. When you're driving for Prema, you got to perform. And so credit to him, getting that podium with the way that everything reset, 3 Premas in the top 5 and 2 high techs as well. So, and then Trident up there. So the top 7 were 3 teams. So something to look at as we move forward, I would say.
Oh, 100%. Prema is like one of the most iconic teams that come out of F2 and F3, given that they have supported a lot of current F1 drivers and previous F1 drivers in their careers as well. But yeah, my heart breaks for Franco. Like, he was P6 and then took the top position. Like, that's a big feat. Like, we see some good overtaking that takes place, but again, this track is narrow and it's fast and it's unknown. So some of the overtakes that took place throughout that entire weekend was absolutely, you wouldn't see it in an F1 car. I'll say that 100%. Like, these drivers like to take the risks because they're trying to fight for it 100%. And yeah, unfortunately with the disqualification, Franco was running in 4th leading into the feature race, but because of that, he dropped down to 12th. At that time, Gabriel Bartolotto was able to still lead the way in the championship and everything forward. But yeah, I'm excited for these rookies. These rookies have actually stepped up a lot more than what I was expecting. I was expecting the people that have raced 1-2 years plus in F3 would actually be more of a gap. Like I said, Gabriel Bartolotto is leading the standings compared to, we thought, Gregor Saucy, who had a great preseason and a great Bahrain race. He's now currently, he's not even in the top 3, which is quite a surprising thing. Like, these rookies are taking 100% of the lead for it. And it's great to see as well because they're willing to get their elbows out. They're willing to kind of fight for it 100%. Yeah, so I mean, leading into the feature race, as mentioned, Gabriel Bartolotto was taking pole, and very similar to F2, he took the win. Literally kept his perfect race record because, as he did when in Bahrain, and there's been only 2 rounds so far, he's currently 2 for 2, which is, for a rookie, for Trident as well. It's such a great feat for them. Trident's been under the radar kind of team for a little bit. They kind of made some noise with Zane and a few other drivers last season, but I think this is becoming potentially their season to kind of run with the championship. Hopefully, we'll see. There's only about 5 more rounds to take place. But yeah, I mean, there was 2 safety cars again, similar to the feature race in F2. Jawad, what was your take on it?
Yeah, so Bortoletto becoming a bit of a feature race specialist, having won, as you said, last time out as well. So it's very important to show that maturity, and that's the kind of driving skill that's going to get you up the rank. And yeah, he's doing quite well so far. But yeah, like you said as well, a few safety cars, a bit of carnage in the midfield and whatnot. So another interesting race. Who did we have second? Gregory Saucy and sorry, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yeah.
Gabriel Mini P3. So literally the
Gabriel
same standing.
P3. Yeah.
Same standing as the as the qualifying.
Yeah, I was looking at the championship standings and whatnot. So yeah, no, so great job from those guys. And like you said, Trident, you don't expect them to be up there team-wise. So, Bortoletto is doing a great job to get them over there. There was contact as well between Montoya and Christian Mansell, I remember, during the race as well, which was a bit hectic and some other stuff going on down there. But like you say, the overtaking, I love how they just go for it. They're not just like, cool, we're going to wait till turn 9 for a pass with DRS. We're just going to literally try and pass wherever we can. And because the cars are so narrow, they can, but the grip is an issue with the tires. So they end up being quite bold.
Definitely. I mean, like, to be fair, we actually had an Australian in the points in F3 of Christian Mansell finishing P10, even with the hit. as you mentioned, which is it's great feeling. Like, I mean, especially with some of these drivers who don't have opportunities, who aren't European based as well. Like, this is some of them closest near home race. There's no Kiwis on the grid anymore, given that Marcus Armstrong has left, and Liam Lawson, is he New Zealand or is he Australian?
He's New Zealand, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's in Super Formula at the moment. But
and he's taken pole as of today in Super Formula in Fiji. Fuji, I think. Yeah, Fuji race, Fuji round, which I just saw just before recording this. But yeah, I mean, even Tommy Smith, P12 in the feature race, obviously out of the points, but given that he had that really bad crash the previous day, it's so nice to see. Like, I love to see these drivers, especially when it's like the home races, try to do good, and it's always nice to have feeling on points. Like, we saw that with Oscar Piastri as well, taking his first points in F1 on that weekend as well. But yeah, as mentioned, it was pretty much the same standings as the start of the grid for the top three, with Gabriel Bortoleto for Trident, followed by Gregor Salsi for ART, and Gabriel Mini for High Tech, another rookie. These rookies are just coming out of it. And like, even Leonardo Finoli for Trident, again, like, you have 2 Tridents in the top 4. That is a great feeling for them. Off the back of even last season was quite good with them, as mentioned. I think it's going to be a very close race. I think it's going to be probably those 3 will be probably the main contenders, given that there's only a few more rounds going forward. But absolutely crazy. So there's a bit of a break for F2 and F3. Hugh Barter as well. Thank you. I hate to say completely forgot, but yeah, doing quite well as well. He finished P15 for Campos. Campos has had some ups and downs in F3. Did well in F2 with Ralph Boschon in the last couple of rounds, but it's going to be quite an interesting season. I'm excited. And again, these rookies are ready to come out for it 100%. I think it's good. Like I said, it's going to be anybody's. Top 3, I think, will probably run with it, but who out of the top 3 will probably be kind of the deciding. I think we'll go all the way down to, I think, Monza more than anything else. But yeah, so as mentioned in previous episodes, F2 and F3 follow the F1 calendar. So those who love F1 know that we are unfortunately on a break at the moment till end of April before we return to Baku. F2 will be racing in Baku. F3 used to race in Baku. However, because it is an F1 sprint race, F3 will not be taking place on the calendar this season, which Baku is one of my favorite tracks. It's one of my favorite races, especially for F2 and F3. Again, it's a street circuit. It's fast. It's unpredictable. Like, I'm glad I'm going to miss the F3, but F2 should still be interesting for the race given. However, there's a few other races that took place. We had IndyCar return for the first time in over a month after an amazing opener of a season. We went to the oval of the Texas Speedway, and lots of yellow flags, cautions, not yellow flags as they like to call it, but such a great race. Phil, give us a rundown of the IndyCar. Let's hear it.
I mean, it was a battle between Pato O'Ward for the McLaren team and Joseph Newgarden, the 2-time IndyCar Series champion for Penske, the defending race winner of at Texas, passing his teammate Scott McLaughlin on the outside on the final lap, which was gutting for me as a McLaughlin fan. But in the end with IndyCar, I have my fandom, but I root for a lot of different guys in that series. But Newgarden's one of the best. He's made his name initially as an oval guy, and then as he's built along the way, he's become an all-arounder. Qualifying, he was in the top 5 there with O'Ward. The McLaren team took 3 out of the top 5 spots. Scott Dixon was the only one, and then the other team that was up there, of course, was Ganassi with Dixon, Takuma Sato, who's doing an oval-only schedule, sharing with Marcus Armstrong this year. in the fourth Ganassi car, and Alex Palou, the champion a couple of years ago. But in the end, it was those two guys that dominated the race, and they led virtually the entire thing. Outside of those two guys, there was 36 laps led by and the rest of the field. So there were 6 guys that led for 36 laps. Outside of that, so they led out of the 250 laps, 220 or so were led by those two. And Award late in the race they had a battle with each other there in the late race, and they were giving back and forth going with each other. And Award had a chance to win at St. Pete. It kind of got away from him because of a caution, and then in this case, it got away from him again late. But for Pato, for a guy who is known who has had his struggles in terms of finishing races or getting the full points and the results that he needs, to go out there and get 2 consecutive second place finishes, coming off of a month break, utilizing the momentum that they had from last year on the ovals. It's a good thing for him. He holds a 7-point lead over Marcus Ericsson, former Formula One driver, defending Indianapolis 500 winner at St. Pete, of course, in the month of March, at the start of the month of March. He finished in the top 10 last week, but wasn't really a factor. And, Palou finished third, led 22 laps. He looks like he's back to where he was a couple of years ago, more than what was going on last year. Of course, he's kind of a lame duck because he's signed by McLaren, so he's going to be going there. I don't know who's going to leave, more than likely Rosenquist, but they haven't said that officially. David Malukas, the rookie from last year, finishing fourth, has really shown to be very adept on the ovals. And Scott Dixon, the ageless wonder, gets another top 5 finish. Scott McLaughlin finishing 6th. Colton Herta with a new strategist, not his father, Brian, getting moved over to Kyle Kirkwood, who got into some stuff with Alexander Rossi. Marcus Ericsson, Callum Ilott with another top 10 finish. So great start to the season for him, the former junior driver in F2 and F3. And he's driving for Juncos, the smallest team on the grid. So 2 top 10 finishes so far is great for him. And Elio Castro-Neves getting a top 10 for the Meyer Shank Racing team. So good progress for that organization as they are looking. Of course, he's looking for that 5th Indianapolis 500 victory. Roman Grosjean was up there for a lot of the race and then wrecked late to end the race. But he has been really, really good on the ovals. And Andretti does have speed. They always seem to have speed at Indianapolis. So we'll see what he can do this year. But yeah, I mean, it was a great race. The Chevys looked like they had a lot of pace, but it was really the 2 and the 5 that did all the pacing. And we'll see what happens. We got Long Beach coming up, one of the classics in IndyCar, one of the classics in general for street course racing. So everyone wants to win Long Beach. It means a lot in your career if you can win that race. And so we'll see what happens. A lot of guys who have won it, a lot of guys who want to win the Grand Prix of Long Beach. So that'll be coming up next week.
Yeah, it's pretty much like you want to win, obviously, the Indy 500, but then you also have Monterey, you also have St. Pete's, and then you have Long Beach. Like, those are like the main ones kind of to look out for. But yeah, as you mentioned, it's next week. It's around 3 p.m. American time, Eastern time. So that's probably about 7 p.m. UK time, thereabouts on the Saturday. Is it the Saturday? Sunday. Sunday, yeah. Because sometimes they do race on the Saturday as well, so it's a little bit kind of confusing. So we'll probably be discussing that roundup on the next couple episodes going forward as well. Not that much besides that. Formula E kind of took a bit of a break as well. there's nothing really coming up on that calendar. There's as mentioned with Liam Lawson in the Super Formula, which races in Japan. GP4 is taking place as of the time of this recording this weekend on the 8th of April. But it's a quiet couple weeks. Tom and I have discussed about F1 Academy, even George as well, in previous episodes about F1 Academy. That also starts towards the end of this month, so we'll definitely be diving into that a bit more into detail. But yeah, so Lawson actually did win in Super Formula. Last time I checked, he took pole. So I feel like I'm out of the loop now about this, which is really bad given should be discussing it. Jared? Any news from that, or?
Oh no, I just saw the headline when I woke up earlier that he won. So good on him. I think he's the first driver in a few decades to actually win on his debut. So it's quite special, I guess, to be able to put that on his resume. And yeah, Lawson not in F2 this year, doing something different. Like we saw Pierre Gasly, I think, went off and did Super Formula as well after GP2 at the time. So, is the path to F1 going to be there for him? And it'd be nice to see another New Zealand driver because, we Australians do like our Kiwi brothers and sisters. So it would be good to see him on the grid. Of course, the last New Zealand driver in F1, Brendan Hartley, sadly didn't live up to the high standards that I had for him. But yeah, Lawson seems like a pretty chill bloke, and it was really cool earlier this year seeing him take, I think, the Red Bull RB7 around Mount Panorama as well. So, it was great to see him take the wheel of that car, and such an iconic track as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's quite. Yeah, I mean, obviously, when drivers do leave F2 and F3, because obviously, in a lot of their mind, the goal is I want to get into F1. But given there's not that much seats, given that a lot of drivers have super long-term contracts, it's very difficult. Hence why a lot of drivers have moved to IndyCar, have moved to other kind of disciplines within the motorsport kind of world. But it's great that he's been able to move and done so well. Like you said, he took pole for the first race of the season, and now he's actually taking the win. I think that's a great on. I wish he did stay in F2, but it's just seats more than anything else in discussion. He's been in the game for a long time and just wasn't as close challenging even last season for it. But there's been a few other like Red Bull juniors that kind of moved around and everything. Alex Palou, Nick Cassidy, as Phil has mentioned through conversations and such, where they've done well, but just nothing forward to them. I mean, Phil, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, the Red Bull, we could go down a rabbit hole with Red Bull junior drivers, honestly. I mean,
next episode, we'll do that.
One of the grid talk shows, I went down that list, and I've done it on my show too. But for Liam Lawson, he's definitely got the talent to go and beat the defending series champion. To be a non-Japanese driver and win Super Formula or compete, that's what it speaks to. Like Cassidy, who won the championship, drove in Japanese GT, then or Super GT as I call it now, and now he's moved on to Formula E and in sports cars. You have Palou, moved to IndyCar with Team Go, and then got the Ganassi deal, and we see where he is now, and driving with McLaren in Formula One, testing and stuff, and will be there. I think Liam Lawson's the same kind of deal. If Red Bull actually had some foresight and wanted to come back to America, there's plenty of teams that could definitely do the job. Now that, Dietrich has sadly passed away, who knows, maybe there might be a market for them to come back in open wheel, especially in IndyCar, because it's a viable product. And there are teams that would definitely love the influx of cash and would take on two junior drivers. And when you consider that, like Enzo Fittipaldi is a great example, his grandfather is the legendary Indianapolis 500 and IndyCar and Formula One world champion Emerson Fittipaldi. You got other you got Jack Crawford. So there's other options there. for the Red Bull drivers. And I think for Lawson, I think it's a great move for him. And it also puts him in a good position if he wanted to dovetail that into WEC or prototype racing, since there's so many factory prototype seats out there now with the new convergence formula that they have.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's so many Red Bull Junior drivers. We see it currently on the F2 and F3 grid. You can't even tell what team they even drive for because they're all in Red Bull cars, which props to the commentators. I know Chris McCarthy and Alex Brundle, hearing them talk about it, and Harry Benjamin as well, talk about trying to pick out the drivers is quite a bit of a challenging feat. But to wrap up, I mean, Jared, what was your take overall? How was the weekend for you? Any interesting stories? Any funny stories? Did you meet any drivers?
No meeting anyone apart from press conferences and just walking past. I remember a couple of times I'd be walking back to my car to leave for the day and just casually following a driver and, them giving you a look and me giving them a look. I'm like, oh yeah. But I'm very low key when it comes to that sort of stuff. I leave the sort of a fandom side to other people, and there was plenty of that over the weekend. It was good to see actually people on this side of the world and their love for the F2 and F3 drivers, even though it's not something we get to see regularly. Probably one of the biggest stories coming out of it was, and it kind of ties into the Supercars Championship as well. So currently, the way that the Albert Park pit complex is built is you've obviously got your pit lane for F1, and F2 and F3 use that during the weekend. And then at the back, there's a standalone pit lane for where the supercars are and their garages and everything. So with F2 and F3 having signed on for the next decade effectively to race here in Australia, a lot of the team personnel and whatnot were not really happy with their paddock arrangement. So Supercars gets its own paddock because it's got those garages, and obviously there's the F1 paddock and everything. But for F2 and F3, they literally set them up in tents on the grass behind, which made it really good for fans for accessibility and to be able to see and whatnot. But given that, these European teams, big European teams, are used to a lot better, I think they're pushing to possibly take over the garage space that the supercars currently occupy, because supercars' contract with the Grand Prix is up at the end of next year. So, and there are plans for the long-term future of Albert Park, given that they are on such a long deal with F1, to, I think, redevelop or make a new pit lane building and everything. And part of that plan moving forwards is also to implement F2 in there at least. So, that'll be big if they decide to shaft supercars, which is the biggest category here in Australia for Formula 2, and I think that would be a big win for Formula 2. So we'll see how it goes. I really enjoyed it though, the accessibility and everything, fans being able to get up close with these young drivers, and for them to kind of not be in that that shielded sort of environment, to get that fan interaction going. And it's good learning for when you do make it up the ranks and, you do become a Max Verstappen, say, or, Charles Leclerc, who they're in big demand whenever they walk past you for autographs and selfies.
That's awesome. I mean, I want to go to one of the races this year, work permitting and accreditation permitting, but it sounds amazing. I see it on social media between yourself and a few others I have spoken to off and on the seasons and everything. It just seems like a great opportunity. The only issue is 130,000 people. That's double my population in one small area. That is daunting to think of.
Well, across the 4 days, it was 444,000 for the weekend, and that broke last year's record of 420,000. So, for those who say F1 isn't popular at the moment, goodness, it's like a festival. It's like a big festival, this Grand Prix, which is why I love it.
I mean, I'll reiterate that 130 is double a country's population. albeit a small country, but still 8 countries population. That is scary. No, my anxiety would never. I could not.
Why do you think I was happy being up in the media center and not having to mix it with the punters?
That's why I'll wait. I'll wait till I get my media accreditation, hopefully down the line and everything, and be like, I'm just going to stick into my corner. I don't care. Just away from people, away from the crowds, 100%. But yeah, so that is the end of episode 8 for Formula Talk. I just want to say thank you to my 2 panelists for joining me for this episode. And obviously, Philip, where can we hear you? Grid Strip Podcast as well, yeah?
Yeah, we can. Thanks for that. Sophia, you can hear me and my co-host Joshua Fine on the Grid Strip Podcast. We're 163 episodes in. We'll be on episode 164 this coming week. Light racing weekend in general because of Easter weekend here in the U.S. But I always say, and I said it just now on the Grid Talk on the Fireside Chat, if it goes fast, we usually talk about it on the Grip Strip Podcast. You can find us at Grip Strip Pod on Twitter. You can find me at Philip G. Mathew on Twitter. You can also find Josh at JP Huffine. He also is a sim racer, a winner of what used to be the iRacing Indy 500. It doesn't exist anymore because IndyCar had the bright idea of not working with iRacing anymore. So he still is an Indy 500 champion there. So that we always use that as part of his open. Our YouTube page is Grip Strip Podcast, so the video feed of our show is also there. So you follow us, like, subscribe. And thanks for having me on, Sophia. It was great having an opportunity to be on the new Formula Talk show and talking about all these other series that really don't get to spend as much time on, even in my case on my show, in the roundup.
Well, it was definitely great to have you. And also, again, joining me for the Formula Talk debut, Jared, hit the apex. What about it?
Yeah, so it's available on all good podcast platforms like your Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Google. I also write for a website called The Raw. I've been covering F1 for them for quite a while now. I live blog every Grand Prix or try to do every Grand Prix. So yeah, that's why I was at the Melbourne Grand Prix repping them, and also wrote a couple of articles for F1 Chronicle to stay tuned for as well. And yeah, thank you so much, Sophia, for having both of us on. It was really good.
Oh, I loved y'all on it. Like, to be fair, we'll have definitely more opportunities. I would love to talk more about IndyCar, especially we'll maybe even look to do an Indy 500 episode, given that it's such a prolonged couple of weeks of it, and discussing about other races throughout the entire season, because there's a lot that we can cover and in such few amount of episodes and times. But if you've enjoyed this podcast, we would love it if you would take a 5-star, take 5 to leave us a 5-star rating on Spotify or a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're one of the 72% of people who have not yet subscribed to this channel, please consider helping us out with a like and subscribe. We'll be back next week to discuss any of the other motorsport kind of news. Primarily, we'll be probably previewing IndyCar and maybe discussing a little bit more about Formula Academy, maybe even Super Formula now that that's taking place. Formula Talk is part of Grid Talk, which you can find us on YouTube, where most of the episodes are recorded live, minus Formula Talk for the time being. Hopefully soon. We said we would have it for the Australian review, but it might be even the Baku review, hopefully. We'll see. But you can find us on Amazon Fire, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Music, Verbal, and Pocket Casts. Just search Formula One Grid Talk for our back catalog of shows with previews and reactions to qualifying and race results. Please consider supporting our channel on Patreon so we can get mics, lights, and better recording equipment. And make sure you're subscribed so you're the first to know when each weekly episode is released. We'll be back soon for plenty more Formula Talk content. Thank you very much for joining me, guys. Really enjoyed having you guys. And thank you very much for listening to the Formula Podcast presented by Bet Online. And that is goodbye for me. Bye.